Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Hope the week's gone well. It's very dark here at the moment, and hopefully we'll get some rain. We've been very short of rain this year. I did an interview with a lady called Jean Liu from Standard Chartered. She's a managing director in China, and Chris Kirigua on the sidelines of the Jack Ma visit, and we were speaking about the China-Africa corridor. Do take a listen if you've got a moment. The worst thing to be in the financial markets is a whale, apparently. Let's have a think about that. A trader whose substantial position is known to a horde of hungry counterparties swimming in a feeding frenzy around the weakened Leviathan. Home thoughts, this tweet went seriously viral. You remember that report from yesterday about the stars and how stardust forms about half of us. And nearly half of the atoms that make up our bodies may have formed beyond the Milky Way and traveled to the solar system on intergalactic winds. If you study cosmology like I have done, the cosmic fine-tuning is just plain miraculous. If you want to read an easy-to-read book to get a grip on what I'm talking about, it's called Just Six Numbers, The Deep Forces That Shape the Universe by Martin Rees. Some of the six numbers should already be familiar to anyone who reads about cosmology, though one is a complete surprise, not because the number is new, but because it is so familiar it had never occurred to me that it was a property that could be any different. One can marvel almost indefinitely at the balance between the nuclear forces and the astoundingly feeble but ultimately inexorable power of gravity, giving us n, a huge number involving 36 zeros, and nod gratefully each time one is told that were gravity not almost exactly 1036 times weaker, then we wouldn't be here. One can gasp at the implications of the density parameter, omega, which 1 second after the Big Bang could not have varied from unity by more than 1 part in a million billion, or the universe would not still be expanding 13.7 billion years on. But says Rees, look at it another way. Suppose instead that you were the intended victim of a firing squad and every bullet missed you. You wouldn't be inclined to wonder if something special had been arranged on your behalf, that somewhere in the looking-glass world of modern physics there might be some deeper reason for the providential value of these six numbers, and if there were, would we be smart enough to see it? It's incredible. It's well worth studying. It takes me back to Rumi, that quote I love. We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust. And also a Marshall McLuhan quote, which I like. There are no passengers on spaceship Earth. We are all crew. And one final quote on that note: there are dead stars that still shine because their light is trapped in time. Where do I stand in this light which does not strictly exist? Don DeLudo, Cosmopolis. I've been listening to the OJ's Love Train. Let me read you some lyrics. People all over the world, everybody, join hands, join. Start a love train, love train. People all over the world now, join hands, love ride, start a love train, love ride, love train. And I thought I belonged to a different era when we actually believed in those kinds of things, that we were all human beings, and all our destiny was kind of intertwined with each other. Today, when you listen to the language of the politics, it couldn't be more opposite, could it? The House passed a $788 billion spending bill that would start funding the wall on the US-Mexico border, point made. I thanked Nairobi Garage yesterday for the opportunity to speak with them. They're just down the stairs here. The presentation I made spanned serendipity and its meaning and how we can shape it. Nassim Taleb, Vinod Khosla and his futures not seen in the rearview mirror, and more. Excellent piece in the Wall Street Journal about Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a perennial favorite for the Nobel Prize and surely one of Africa's greatest writers. I've read quite a bit of his, and I must say I've enjoyed it. In 1977, on the orders of then Kenya's Vice President Daniel Arap Moi, Ngugi wa Thiong'o was detained without trial in a maximum security prison in Nairobi. His offense was having engaged in activities and utterances dangerous to the good government of Kenya and its institutions. The year of confinement did not have the intended effect of silencing him. Writing on government-issued toilet paper, Mr. Ngugi kept a scrupulous diary, later published under the title Detained, and produced a novel, Devil on the Cross. And then talking about the Devil on the Cross, saying, it's an allegorical novel, stages a kind of satirical reversal of Bunyan's pilgrimage to the celestial city, imagining a journey from Nairobi to the wicked village of Ilmorog, where the devil is staging a contest in evil doing. Instead of showing mankind the path to heaven, it exposes the latter-day hellscape of a post-colonial Kenya that worships at the altar of money. While roaming the city, Wairinga receives a mysterious invitation to something called the Devil's Feast, a devil-sponsored competition to choose 7 experts in theft and robbery. During the trip to Ilmorog to view the nightmarish spectacle, she encounters travellers from all strata of Kenyan society, labourers, intellectuals, businessmen, and the novel records their testimonies, concluding with the speeches of the nouveau riche vying in the satanic competition. Believe me when I say that theft and robbery are the measure of a country's progress, says one of the businessmen, because in order for theft and robbery to flourish, there must be things to be stolen. One standalone chapter facetiously repurposes the parable of the talents to defend the virtue of amassing huge fortunes. The victor at the Devil's Feast is a man who has contrived to extract and export the actual blood of his workers, a practice rationalized on the grounds that drinking blood is part of the Christian rite of the Eucharist. I'll give you some quotes. Written words can also sing, he said, in dreams in a time of war. The condition of women in a nation is the real measure of its progress, he's also said. Stories like food lose their flavor if cooked in a hurry. For I had reached a point in my life when I came to view words differently. A closer look at language could reveal the secret of life. Talking about the atoms, half of the atoms that make up everything around you are intergalactic interlopers, according to New Scientist, tracking the flow of matter from the origin of the universe to the present day and understanding where the atoms that make up the air we breathe and water we drink is one of the fundamental problems in astrophysics. It's one of the holy grails of extragalactic cosmology, she says. Now we've found that half these atoms come from outside our galaxy. John McCain's no vote sank the Republican skinny repeal plan. It still boggles my mind as to how so much political capital is being wasted on a complete farce. After Palestinian protests and a diplomatic standoff, Israel removed security measures near a holy site in Jerusalem. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm to call this a big victory, a blow against Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. Hardly. The UK will sail its new aircraft carriers through contested Asian waters on a freedom of navigation operation, as the FT is reporting. That's an interesting development. And then I saw RT, if Trump ordered the the answer would be yes. US Admiral is ready to launch nukes on China. My conclusions are, in that regard, Xi Jinping struts the world stage, and it is his writ that now runs in the South China Sea. Get that right. The pivot to Asia is now dead in the water. I wrote about the pivot to Asia bearing its fangs in December 2013, and what I can say is, to all intents and purposes, it's being defanged. Trump communications chief Anthony Scaramucci, one of the things I can't stand about this town, he said, is the backstabbing. Where I grew up, we are front stabbers. Now take a look at an interview he did with Ryan Lees in the New York, a conversation with Anthony Scaramucci. It is the most extraordinary thing I've ever read. At least 5 dead during Saudi security operation in Qatif. Then I saw this photograph of Qatif, 5 o'clock cheers. Took me back to what I wrote on the 8th of May, quoting the now acting king of Saudi Arabia, who said, "How can I communicate with them while they prepare for the arrival of Al-Mahdi al-Montazar?" And this was a further point I was making, that the problem in Saudi Arabia is not on the outside, it's not Yemen, it's not these other countries, it's inside. The number of monthly users rose by 15 million people from a year earlier to 328 million on Twitter. Facebook over the same period added 294 million. I'm not a big Twitter bearer, I'm a bull on this pullback. Amazon shares dropped after earnings missed estimates. Amazon reminded investors that luring shoppers away from stores and dominating the cloud computing industry isn't cheap. On Thursday, forecast a potential quarterly loss for the first time in 2 years. Amazon said it's boosting spending on new warehouses to meet growing e-commerce demand for data centers for its Amazon Web Services division, video programming to keep customers engaged, and gadgets like the Echo line and voice-activated speakers to stay on the cutting edge of the emerging smartphone market. Amazon's projected operating income in the current period ranging from a loss of $400 million to a gain of $300 million. The last projected quarterly loss came in July 2015 for similar reasons. The third quarter is generally a high investment period for the holiday. So a little bit of disappointment. Q2 revenue came in at 38 billion, however. And the previous time, same quarter, 30.4 billion. So it's still growing big time, bigly. In the past year, Bezos has earned an average of $833 million a week. That's 970,000 times more than the median American worker, said Robert Reich. And I said, "Dear Robert Reich, Jeff Bezos deserves every single penny. He bet big on the future, and it has paid off. If anything, we need more Bezoses." Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar got as low as 116.50, 52. Yesterday I saw, now back at 117.10. The dollar index 93.75, 93.50 is seriously a key area. Japanese yen dipped below 111, now at 111.26. Swiss franc 0.9695, the pound 113.94, the Australian dollar 0.7960, India rupee 64.155, South Korean won 1121.27, the Brazilian real 315.40, Egyptian pound 17.8845, South African rand 13.0304. Dollar index, take a look at this longer term chart I'm posting. 93.50 is an area I've spoken about for eternity, and it's a key area of support. I would have thought we're going to bounce off here, but if we slice through it, we're going to go straight down. Euro dollar, I think, is a trading short. We're now at 117.12. Dollar yen, take a look at this. Dollar yen last trading at 111.25. Some people are thinking it's about to break lower, go to below 110. I'm not so sure. Barclays PLC said it made a £1.4 billion loss on the sale of a 33% stake in Barclays Africa Group, and took a further £1.1 billion impairment charge on the sale. Barclays Africa said on Friday its half-year profit rose 7%, driven by solid earnings growth in its local market and the rest of Africa. Barclays Africa's rest of Africa banking rose 19%, so you can see that that's a positive story behind Barclays. WTI crude oil is now at $49, closed above $49 for the first time since May. I think it's very toppy, but it could run up another dollar. US has ordered relatives of embassy staff to leave Venezuela. Lee Sachs has given us a closing price graph of WTI, $49.04. Look, it's going to go back down again big time, but you never know where it can go up to in the meantime. Gold last trading 12.59.50, but feels as if it doesn't have much impetus. Very interesting article about avocados. A confluence of factors drove the wholesale cost of Hass avocados from Mexico to more than double this year. Mexico obviously is the biggest supplier to the US, but saying there are signs of a reprieve. The wholesale cost has dropped more than 6% from a record reached earlier in July. Prices in the foreseeable future will stabilize a little. You won't see a sharp incline. Growers are going to try to put more trees in the ground to keep up, but you're not going to see 10 avocados for $1. The cost of Hass avocados imported from the state of Michoacan, Mexico's largest producer, has fallen this month since reaching the highest in government data going back 19 years. The price of a 10-kilogram, 22-pound box surged 140% this year to $34.02. That translates to $1.51 per Hass avocado. And saying, the gains came amid seeming insatiable appetite for the fruit. Americans on average ate about 7.1 pounds of avocados each in the 2015-2016 season. Avocados have really become very popular, and the diversity of usage plays into that. The global market virtually exploded overnight, and this is all a millennial story, isn't it? Probably the best avocado I've ever tasted was grown and eaten by me in the Mara at the Fairmont. Delicious. And in 8th May, I wrote about how avocados had found an off-ramp and were at all-time highs. Let's move on to Africa. Mugabe's party apparently is to consider early Zimbabwe elections. Zimbabwe's ruling party is considering calling elections early next year, out of concern that President Robert Mugabe's health is worsening and disputes among his supporters could galvanize opposition efforts to form an alliance, 3 officials familiar with the government's plans said. General elections must be held constitutionally by August 21st in 2018. ZANU-PF's chances of maintaining its more than 3-year decade grip on power will improve the earlier it can hold the vote. Party's Politburo members are not to be identified because the discussions haven't been made public. This year's better harvest, which has eased economic hardship, this is a phenomenon we're seeing across southern Africa. They had very good rains. Squabbling among opposition parties are also bolstering the argument for moving up the ballot timetable. Mugabe is the master of surprise and will pick a time when the opposition is in disarray. An early election makes sense for ZANU-PF while the party is fractured. Mugabe is still in control. Name your successor, his wife has urged President Mugabe. And then I saw a retweet from Trevor Cube. It said, more fun and games, Grace Mugabe is getting close to the throne. The story is that they might appoint 3 vice presidents, one of whom would be a woman, and of course Grace. Congo Central Bank predicts a steep rise in 2017 inflation. DR Congo Central Bank said in a report on Thursday it expects inflation for this year to stand at 44.64%, up from a previous forecast of 33.12% and a 20 percentage point rise over last year. It's just unbelievable. President Kabila continues to hang on, but everything is burning around him. Behind every clean electric car, there is cobalt, and behind cobalt is the DR Congo. Have a read of that article by David Pilling. For whom Bell Pottinger tolls the perils of lobbying in Africa. They, of course, were lobbying on behalf of the Gupta brothers And a lot of this has been leaked into the public domain, and it's frightful. Particularly the fact that they used the phrase white monopoly capital, when it really was Zuma monopoly capital, Zuma Zupta monopoly capital. South African all share up 8.36% year to date, and just less than 1% below an all-time high. Dollar Rand back above 13. Nigerian stocks have rallied for 16 successive days, a feat last accomplished in 2001. That's taken the benchmark index, the world's worst performer of 2016 in dollars, to an almost 50% gain since early March, the best globally. I wrote about this on the 15th of May when I wrote a piece called Africa Plays Catch Up, and how did we? Nigerian all shares up 38.59% year to date and at a 33-month closing high. Ghana's central bank 150 basis point rate cut this week will boost lending by local banks and signals that the economy is gradually improving. Moody's Investors Services said. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 33.57% year to date. Wonderful morning in Dar es Salaam. Love this place. This is from the Kush. Acacia Mining, which was renamed after a local tree with pom-pom blossoms and finger-length thorns, has just been handed, as we all know, a spectacular $190 billion tax bill and fine. The president has incited anti-colonial resentment to paint a picture of rapacious Western investors cynically depriving Tanzania of its natural wealth, said Gibson at Edison. I have been fighting for Tanzania to get the right shares and mineral revenues for a decade, said Zitto Kabwe, an opposition party leader. But I will never support claims like the ones we have put forward. The world will see us as not serious people and ignore us. This is the point I was making, out of being so egregious, therefore not credible and therefore incredible. And on the 11th of July said recent events in Tanzania and South Africa's mining sectors are tipping both jurisdictions into an uninvestable and twilight zone. And I said the Tanzanian mining sector, other than Acacia, who is already in situ, is now shuttered. Interestingly, Barrick's president says he's very positive on Tanzania talks over ban, but he has to say something like that. AB InBev and BAT gain after Zimbabweans turned to plastic for payments. An interesting report, actually. Delta, Anheuser-Busch, InBev, SA, NV brewing operations in the southern African country reported a 12% rise in lager volumes in the 3 months through June, the first increase since September 2015, while British American Tobacco's PLC Zimbabwe unit posted an 8% profit rise in the half year through June. Mobile payments and internet transactions rose to $1.6 billion in May from $1.1 billion in April. Card payments increased to $602.5 million, this all in Zimbabwe, from $506 million previously. E-payments have countered to a significant extent the impact of the shortages of cash. That's from the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. BAT, Zimbabwe's finance director Lucas Francisco, said almost 90% of people are now using cards to pay for cigarettes. East African breweries reported full-year profits today, this morning. Full-year profit after tax was down 17.097%, but full-year turnover was up very strongly, 9.211%. Cost of sales rose 21.82%. Total costs came down 4.141%. Profit before income tax was down 2.291%. Profit for the year, however, was down, after tax was down 17.097%. Now, the reason is that they had a one-off extraordinary gain the previous full year, and they did not repeat that. If you strip out that, EPS from continuing operations rose 3.739%. Total dividend payout was maintained at final dividend 5 shillings and 50 cents. Total dividend payout 7 shillings and 50 cents as previously. Group volumes accelerated 5%. Good performance in mainstream spirit and value beer, with both delivering double-digit growth. Net sales performance plus 9%, mainly driven by Kenya, which had good spirits and value beer growth. Value beer growth is the Senator product. But then they were talking about how sales were impacted by weak bottled beer sales driven by excise tax increases. That was referring to his flagship beer, Tusker. Talking about drought-related inflationary pressure impacted consumers' disposable incomes. Kenya contributed 74% of EABL sales. Uganda revenue up 7%. Tanzania revenue down 12%. Let's see if that continues to be a theme out of these multinationals. Key innovations: Tusker Cider, Pilsner 7, Smirnoff, Electric Ginseng in Kenya, Gule in Uganda, Serengeti Light in Tanzania. Talking about the 15 billion shilling investment in the Kisumu brewery. And then listen to this: very encouraged by trends in the second half in Kenya, during which the business saw better performance in premium and mainstream beer. In Tanzania, the company made a settlement with the Fair Competition Commission after several years of uncertainty, and business was back to growth in Q4. So the minus 17.097% reduction in full year profit after tax might grab the headlines, but remember that EABL was lapping full year 2016, where there was a 2.249 billion shilling extraordinary gain. Headline full year revenue was up 9.211%, which is high and healthy. Kisumu Brewery is a big bell bet on value beer, and there's plenty of scope there. Regulatory volatility is a de rigueur phrase these days. I thought these results were constructive and support a higher share price and a positive re-rating. John Aguinby is reporting the FT that the Kenya Airways banks have agreed to a debt-for-equity swap. There has been no agreement yet on how many shares the creditors will receive for their debt or when the swap will happen. The government has insisted that it will not increase its stake in Kenya Airways to more than 50% because Nairobi does not want to control the airline. The gun to our head was that we didn't have a choice but to agree to this if we wanted our money back, said one banker. The restructuring is contingent, however, on parliamentary approval and on all relevant stakeholders agreeing to its terms. CIC Insurance reported first half earnings per share was up 8.33%. Gross written premiums were up an eye-popping 20.43%. Dash for growth with a 20.43% gross written premium, rebounding listed portfolio at the NSE, but there's a very strong H2 skew, which tends to make H1 statistically just 1/4 of the full year earnings. Kenya shilling 103.90, Nairobi all share up 18.79%, fresh 24.5-month highs, Africa-wide phenomenon, as I've said already. Safaricom is up 29.086% in 2017 on a total return basis. Market cap is 951 trillion. We get to 25 and it will be the first trillion shilling company listed at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. NSE 20 up 18.16% and at 13-month highs, came off a little yesterday. TPS Serena is now up 23.17% year to date. On that note, have a look at this photograph of the seaside that I took when I was staying in the Mombasa Serena. Uchumi, after rallying a parabolic 75% this month, finally met some profit taking and eased 6.49% to close at 360. I think the central bank and government of Kenya sent the correct signal to the markets. They're not short of cash, will not take money at any price. This is regarding the undersubscription of a 10-year bond. It is apparently being reported that Abrage's Orios will be selling 5.53% of their ordinary shares in Deacons. Deacons is down 41.322% year to date and has a market capitalization of just $4.4 million. Once again, I'm always grateful that you stopped by. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.